or sell the Qatar stock market ETF? First off, read this disclaimer carefully. Then do your good deed of the day by liking and subscribing. So Qatar, it is in the Middle East. We see that the stock market is 5% from the 52-week low, but we are 19% away from the highs. We start here by looking at the chart, weekly data points, and we can, go back here to 2014. One of the things I do see here, that's definitively time cycles. They have differed a bit in duration, but it is a market that moves in time cycles. We see another thing, and that is this blue 100-week moving average. Especially since the breakout here above it back in 2020, you see that it's been pretty solid support. So let me just draw that in. Support 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times recently, and it was support back here and very viable. The difference between the test back in 2021 here and now is that we are testing it a bit more frequently than we should. Ideally, you test the moving average and then you rally. The problem for the bulls is definitively this resistance from the green 50-week moving average, which is a prior support level that became resistance. So we are kind of stuck. Looking at the daily data points, there is, some kind of floor being built, but there is a cluster of moving average resistance above us. So the situation is messy. I do, however, think that given that we so cleanly stopped here dead on the blue 100-week moving average, it is a support level of interest. If we were to break below it, then the bears would certainly have a case. But I think that's currently it's interesting to see what the bulls are going to do next week. So I'm going to lean a bit bullish here. Looking at RSI and PPO, we are at a relatively low level. Looking at the daily data points for the same indicators, I don't like the weakness of accumulation distribution. So we do not have buyers building positions here. We do see selling, notwithstanding the moving average support. RSI and PPO is not at like a screaming buy level. But it's not like an appealing level for the bears either. So in the notes, I write 100 weekly moving average support. I give the bulls a 4 here. They only get a 4 because I don't like the continued testing of that support level. We don't see that bounce effect that we want to see. Then again, we do see that the bulls are able to prevent a close below that support. So it's a 4 to the bulls. Let's look at seasonality for Qatar. So to the right here, we do see in green over the last 5 years, the seasonality is decent, but it is a bit flattish. And then we see some low here around 8-ish of December, but then we do see a strong rally from Qatar into the early 20s of December. So there is more bullish seasonality than bearish. To the left, over the last 5 years, November, the current month, is not that good. December and January are some of the strongest. Over the last 9 years, November is a bad month, but December and January are the strongest months. I will give the bulls a 6 here on the seasonality. We have already seen the expected weakness of November. We are at a moving average, so this is just interesting. Yeah, so the bulls get a 6 here. In this case, we compare Qatar with the S&P 500. We do see, if we go to performance, that year to date, Qatar is substantially outperforming America, 5% gain versus 16% loss. Beta 0.54 versus 0.99, so far less volatility. The PE is, however, rather similar, 21-ish versus 22-ish. Yield 2% versus 1.22%. Looking at the holdings, 33 versus 505. You see Qatar is in a lot of these names. There's a lot of state ownership. Finance sector is actually the biggest. You might expect energy, but finance is actually the biggest. 11.6% is non-energy minerals. So yeah. Going further down, you do see some diversification here in market cap. The people who look at fundamentals are going to be a bit intrigued by what we saw, but not majorly intrigued, but I do give the bulls a 3 here on the fundamentals. Let's look at relative performance. Long term, there is a 75% positive correlation with the S&P 500, 93% with the crude oil, 39% with the dollar index, and 84% with natural gas. So very much tied to fossil fuels. Short term, 82% with S&P 500, 23% with crude oil, minus 57% with the dollar, and 45% positive here with natural gas. So looking long and short term, the most consistent and strongest correlation we do get here is actually with the S&P 500, but I do think that looking at natural gas is a bit more interesting. So I'm going to look at natural gas. NG. So here is the futures. Natural gas, it's been a bit messy. You see that the previous week's candlestick was way up here, a resistance at the purple 20-week moving average, a major pullback. We actually did close below the green 50-week moving average here. On the dailies, the green 50-day moving average is a very clear resistance level, pretty easy to short. Let's quickly look at these other indicators, dailies and the weeklies. Here I am comparing Qatar against the natural gas futures. Yeah. So we are at a low relationship in this pair. We pulled back from an overbought, well, a high-ish resistance level on RSI. We see that usually it is a bit messy here when it comes to the RSI. I do see some time cycles. Let's see how reliable the time cycles have been. There was a period here where the time cycles were pretty tradable, but they have been broken up a bit. So yeah, it's a bit in limbo here. A bit difficult to make calls. So let's look at the seasonality. So in blue over the last 7 years, green the last 5 years, we do see that Qatar has a tendency to quite strongly outperform natural gas all the way into later February. I think I will give the bulls a 4 here on relative performance, especially the relationship between Qatar and nat gas was interesting. So we do end up with a 4.3 here in favor of the bulls. We are at 100 weekly moving average support. I think all in all, this looks more bullish than bearish, but I don't like that the support level has been tested so many times without a strong rally. Then again, November is a weak month. We have seen that weakness, so the strength of December and January could be enough to intimidate the bears. So we do have some time left now to go through some charts. The thing is that it's very difficult for people to trade the stocks on the Qatar exchange. So I think I'm just going to look at stocks that are more easily for people to access. So let's look at some energy stocks. Let's look at ExxonMobil. Very strong rally here on the weeklies. Seeing some weakness here. Let's look quickly at the dailies. Oh yeah, some rounding-ish. And this was, what is this? Yeah, pattern, yeah, and dividend, yeah. Yeah, okay, so let's look at RSI. We are in a dangerous territory here on RSI for the bulls. Also on the PPOs, on the weeklies, on the dailies. Yeah, we have been rather overbought. Looking here at MACD, the previous times we had like these clear sell signals on the MACD back here. You did get a pretty good shorting opportunity. When we go back, it's here. Sell signal on the MACD, as you can see here, in the pretty protracted sell-off here on ExxonMobil. So ExxonMobil looks more like a short than a long. I mean, this is a very strong rally, so it makes perfect sense to have some pullback. Let's look at CDX, Chevron. Oh, almost an identical pattern. I mean, yeah. So let's look at something else. I mean, banks were pretty big in, well, the financial sector was big in the Qatar ETF. So let's look at Bank of America. So we met resistance at the green 50-week moving average. There's not been that much squeaky clean interaction with it as of late. The 200 daily moving average is a key level. Yeah, but we have been able to break out above it. So we have had a strong rally, but then we are above that prior resistance level. And this one is a bit messy, a bit messy for my taste. So let's look at. Is it VFC? Yes, Wells Fargo. There are so many tickers. I'm quite amazed by all the ones I actually remember. Yeah, the green 50-week moving average, resistance back here, support here. Now it is, well, it was temporarily support, but then we broke below it. Let's look at the daily data points. Yeah, there's some of these charts they are a bit massive because we have recently seen big gains. We then pull back to support. FIFA is a big topic as of late. Here is Manchester United's chart. Of course, that's English local club. It's not a national club, but anyway, we do see here something that looks a lot to me like an inverse head and shoulders pattern. That's interesting. Are there any US listed stocks with FI, FIFA-ish as a ticker? No. What about FIF? Yes, we have a FIF. Well, it's a closed fund, so that's a different thing. Let's go back to some fossil fuel companies. Here is Phillips 66. Very similar chart. We've seen a very strong rally, and a lot of these are really looking shortable. Resistance from a key RSI level. Also, the PPOs are at the problematic point. On the dailies, we see something very similar. If you look at the MACD here, it's very clean as far as the pattern goes. Previous time we reached this upper end of the MACD. Just amazing shorting opportunity here. So this is the bear in me is really. This is looking interesting. How are the well, cleaner energies looking? Here is solar. Some trouble here as well, actually, because the blue 100-week moving average is a key resistance level. Looking at the daily data points, then we do have a breakout. Now let's look at whether we are overbought or not. Not really on the weeklies. Now looking at the dailies, then we are a bit overbought-ish, a bit due a pullback. Let's look at uranium. We have fallen back to a level of interest, but it is a bit messy. So let's look at what kind of stop level you would have to operate with. Yeah, it becomes a bit wide. So we are at a horizontal support level, but the chart, it is definitively very messy. So I wouldn't have a very tight stop, at least with this one, given that there's so many potential key support levels here. Let's look at fan, wind energy. A rejection from the red 200-week moving average. Let's go to the dailies. Yeah, the 100-day is the problem in this case. So we have looked at Qatar and a bunch of, stocks that you can start to associate with when you talk about Qatar. All in all, I think this looks a bit interesting for Qatar from a bullish perspective. The only caveat I have is that the 100 weekly moving average, it is support, but not a strong bounce level